for a lot of us, it's like watching a car accident instead of focusing on the direction we should be headed. That's a sideshow out there.
The Huffington Post is doubling down on its decision to label its coverage of Donald Trump's presidential campaign as entertainment.
I don't think Wednesday night went well for him at the debate. I think this is the week we're going to look back on and say, maybe this was the beginning of the end of Trump 16.
But things did not start looking down for Trump at that point. They just kept looking up. So perhaps it's time to look at how the media is covering Trump and how effective it's been. Joining us is Keith Boag, CBC News Senior correspondent, and Angelo Carusone, Executive Vice President of Media Matters, a left-leaning nonprofit media watchdog. They're both in Washington. Good morning. Hello. So, Keith, let's start with you. How effective, this is a big question, but how effective do you think the media has been at covering Trump?
Well, that's in this particular circumstance, that's a difficult question to understand even. How effective have they been? It depends. What did you think their objective was? Was it to bring information to the public about what Donald Trump is all about? I think they've actually done that. But if there was an expectation that that would somehow, and clearly there was, an expectation that that would somehow derail Trump's campaign, I think that reveals a fundamental misunderstanding on the part of the media, but on the part of many other establishment institutions as well, that this was really something that could be exposed and that it wasn't about the people following Trump or rather it was about the people following Trump not understanding what he was. They understand what he is. They just happen to like it.
All right, so Angela, I know that you're no stranger to Trump's intimidation tactics. We've heard Donald Trump say that the media are the worst group of liars he's ever seen. He's even suggesting suing them, which raises some concerns that Mitt Romney's raised about, First Amendment rights being at risk here. Now, I understand that he threatened you and your group with a lawsuit in 2013 because you were petitioning Macy's to drop his brand for his efforts in the Obama birther movement, suggesting that Obama wasn't born in the United States. Do you think, what was that like?
I mean, in that case, I was both working at Media Matters and I was actually conducting the campaign against Macy's on my own in my own personal capacity. And I think the effect of that, even that legal threat, is very significant in terms of what that could actually mean for the news media. Because when I got that legal threat for $25 million lawsuit on Christmas Eve, the intention was to get me to stop talking about Donald Trump and the efforts publicly. And what the effect of that was either I could have just followed the suit, the threat and stopped completely, or if I wanted to continue to engage in my public efforts, I needed to make sure that I had legal counsel, enough resources, or donated or otherwise to sustain a protracted legal fight against Donald Trump. And what that actually meant was it took about 3 months to marshal both the legal resources necessary, the support needed to continue to conduct those efforts, and in that time period there was a real meaningful chilling effect on my speech and on my conduct. Now, thankfully, I didn't just stop and go home, but the effect is chilling. And I think that even the mere threat that Donald Trump puts out there against news companies, they'll have the same effect. They'll necessarily self-censor. They'll not want to deal with not just legal threats, but actual litigation from Donald Trump. Even frivolous lawsuits can cost these companies, who are already sort of struggling to meet the bottom line, a lot of money. And that's partly what is motivating the intense coverage around them, too, on the opposite end of that spectrum. I mean, one of the reasons why Trump is getting all of his stump speeches covered live on cable news every single day, unlike any other candidate, is because of the entertainment value that's there, at least how they characterize it, the ratings, and then the potential for them to commercialize that. And, the head of CBS even said that Donald Trump's bad for America, but he's good for CBS. And I think they all really believe that.
But just on that point, Keith, certainly not. I don't think Donald Trump's going to sue the CBC. But do you hear from your American colleagues that they are worried when he talks about threatening to sue media organizations? Do you think it is having a bit of a chilling effect? And is that part of the reason why the media hasn't, maybe pointed out as many of his untruths as they could?
Well, I'm not sure that I buy the last part of that, but let me just talk about the chilling effect. I think people are starting to pay attention to Donald Trump saying that he maybe favors some kind of adjustments to, the First Amendment in America. He knows there's an audience for that. I mean, the notion that everybody would be recoiling at the idea that he would curtail some people's right to speech, I think it's nonsense. I think that there is a constituency out there who says, yeah, the media has gone too far in this country, and it's about time we had a strong man, an authoritarian leader like Donald Trump to rein them in a bit. So, I think the most important part of this story is emerging, and it is that the people do understand what he is saying. They do know what it means, and they have no objection to it. I don't mean the people like 100%, but clearly, we don't know where the ceiling is. It looks like it's at least 35%. But I think it's vitally important to understand that the message is getting through to them, but they're rejecting it because it comes from what they believe is a discredited mainstream institution that has a consensus view of America that they no longer share.
All right, so yeah, to your point, Keith, that maybe the media is holding Trump to task. Here's a clip that shows a Fox News moderator at Thursday's debate where he presents Trump with some discrepancies in his plan. Let's play that.
Take a look. Excuse me. You're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars.
No, you're not.
If we went out to the proper bid, of course you are.
No, you're not, sir. Let's put up full screen number 2. You say that Medicare could save $300 billion a year negotiating lower drug prices, but Medicare total only spends $78 billion a year on drugs. Sir, that's the facts. You're talking about saving more money on Medicare.
I'm saying saving
drugs.
through negotiation throughout the economy, you'll save $300 billion a year.
Deficit.
And that's a huge, of course it is.
Okay, so Angelo, what did you think of that? This is interesting. I know that you're from a left-leaning watchdog. This is Fox News that is actually, they've come up with big graphics saying, here are the facts, you're wrong, sir, your numbers just don't add up.
Yeah, that was actually a rather extraordinary moment because you typically don't associate facts in Fox News. But there's actually a very significant reason as to why Fox News can sort of be a little bit more aggressive there than, say, some of the other channels. Part of what I think is affecting, say, some of the coverage, at least in terms of facts, and challenging him is less an issue of the chilling effect right now, but more a question of access. And news programs, media companies, reporters, they know that if they push Donald Trump too hard, he'll simply deny them access going forward, as he has done so far throughout this cycle. And yet Fox News is sort of positioned very well in that sense because while he may fight individual personalities and hosts, and there's certainly been a lot of friction between Donald Trump and Fox News, sort of a power tussle over that very core right-wing constituency in America since this campaign has unfolded. There's still a symbiotic relationship there, and Donald Trump can only go so far. And what that means is that you can get, say, a Chris Wallace, who gets up there and actually presents the facts to Donald Trump and forces him to confront them in front of a live national audience. Now, in some ways, he's inoculated from blowback there because at least the core part of his base right now is sort of steeped in a universe where facts don't really matter. They live in an alternative universe where everybody is lying to them about everything, and so you don't have to believe anything that's being told to you. But that is a pretty good model for journalists going forward, is to sort of adapt that and force Donald Trump to confront the facts, not just the bigotry and the vitriol that he's putting out there, but the actual misinformation that sort of is his campaign is built on top of.
And yet, Keith, one of the issues is that sometimes the news cycle, or at least a few hours of it, is dominated by the size of Donald Trump's hands or other kind of really low-blow personal insults. So is it hard, do you find, to kind of focus on policy, to focus on the things that really matter?
Look at that example from Fox News. That's what happens when you try, if you're confronting him. Sure, you can write all you want about the holes in his policy prescriptions. But again, return to the point that people don't care about that. People know that he's lying to them. I mean, his supporters know that he's lying to them. They don't care about that either. They think that he is at least saying things that are generally in the right direction of what they believe is the correct route for the country. Can I just say something about the relationship with Fox News as well? And I agree with what Angelo said, but I would add to that another perspective as well, which is Fox News is a part of the Republican establishment. They are legitimately at war with Donald Trump. They have been since the very beginning. On August 6th, the very first debate that they had, which was on Fox News, it was Fox News that tried to take him down by embarrassing him on whether he was truly a Republican and get him to swear that he would support the candidate if it weren't him. It was Megyn Kelly of Fox News that began her questioning by pointing out that he was a misogynist. I think Fox News is the part of the Republican establishment that is now scared that Donald Trump is going to take over because they don't have any purchase with him. And I think when you see Fox News acting in the way that they are, you should consider that they are really the media arm of the Republican establishment.
Interesting. Okay, so here is a clip. I'll continue with you, Angelo, in a second. But here's a clip of something that Trump said just last hour about the media.
So, look, it's the establishment. The establishment is against us. The press back there is against us, although some of it's coming around, I must tell you. I read a couple of articles this morning. Folks. They're coming around. By the way, polls show that I beat Hillary Clinton. Many polls show that I beat Hillary Clinton.
Okay, so there you go. So that was, you know, I'm wondering, Angelo, I sometimes find Trump hard to follow because there's just sort of half thoughts. There's, there's one thought, there's tangents, and he moves on. This morning, I was asked to, I usually do what's called a little ad lib rap out of what Trump is saying, and my producer asked me if I could do that, and I said, I'm not sure that I actually can. And I'm just being very frank and honest because I find him hard to follow. Is that part of the problem?
It is. It is, and it's because, in large part, some of the events that he does in his speeches are not intended for a television audience. They have that sort of raw entertainment value there, but they're not meant to be followed. It's meant to be an experience. So that's why sometimes he goes on these non sequiturs or tangents, because if you're actually in the crowd and all of a sudden he steps away from the microphone and screams about how beautiful everything is, or he goes off of a non sequitur sort of about a separate story, or he sells you a fantasy about what it would be like when he gets on the phone with the leader of another country or the head of a corporation, and it's somewhat of a tangent, but that itself is a very discrete compartmental story that the audience really can eat up. But I think that the through line there, though, is what he was telling about the media, which is that he goes off on these attacks. He demonizes them. He calls them disgusting in every single one of his stump speeches. And then you see these moments where he turns around and says, they're starting to come around. See, they're starting to come around. And in part, he's sort of validating his own narrative that he's telling and selling to his audience and to prospective supporters, which is that I'm Trump. I can persuade people. I can move people. He identifies a villain, in this case, the media. He spends a long time making sure everybody knows that they're the villain. And now he'll turn around and start to say that, look, their coverage is changing. Their behavior is starting to improve. It's because of what we did. That doesn't prevent him from doing it in the future. But what the effect of that is that it reinforces what he's selling about himself, that he can actually get things done and change things.
Final thought from you, Keith, on some of the challenges of coverage. Just a quick thought, because we're running out of time, but on some of the challenges of covering Donald Trump and how you think it's going to be moving forward.
Well, I think, it's going to change moving forward because you can already see that Donald Trump is doing the pivot right now. He is saying things that are going to, that he believes will be more appealing in a general election stance. He's almost put the Republican nomination in the bag and is now changing his position on some things. I think that telling people that's not going to make any difference at all because the evidence of the past is that Donald Trump knows exactly what his audience wants to hear, and it is the media who does not. We have missed this. And every time he says something we think is so sensationally off the page, his poll numbers go up, not because he's such a great communicator in a very traditional sense, but because he understands better than the media did who his audience is.
Very interesting to speak to both of you this morning. Thank you very much. That is Keith Boag, CBC News Senior correspondent, and Angelo Carusone is the Executive Vice President of Media Matters, both in Washington.